I remember the first time I went there, everyone was dressed in black. But that was fashion back then. And the sales actually depended on the review that the journalist would give. It was interesting to see how the media had the power.
It's truly a Devil's Wear Prada kind of situation.
Evangelina Fysa,
founder at Bungalow 28.
Global digital agency
with skills in digital marketing,
brand strategy,
and data analysis.
When I started Bungalow, it was a different plan. So I went back to the drawing board and I had like 3 columns. The things I'm good at, the things I'm not, and what I need to do to get to where I am today. I wrote down I really like fashion, I really like art and culture. I love technology. So what can I do to merge everything?
Hello. Welcome to another episode of Made in Cyprus, big business stories from a tiny island. And today with me, we have Evangelina Fysa. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure. I know you're the founder of Bungalow 28, yes, which is a really interesting concept merging marketing, design, and tech into the fashion space. And what I wanna understand is how you got there. What shaped you the most when you were Mitzi Evangelina? Let's say what drove you into what you are now?
So it's so nice that you asked that question. I actually grew up in a home that was made out of 2 very contrasting worlds. My mother was into fashion and arts and music and culture. And then my dad was engineer, physics, numbers. And I think, growing up and being exposed to those different worlds, I was able to incorporate everything into who I am today. And I was always very curious. And I remember my dad showing me, how to turn on a computer. You remember how these things were, with the large screens. And then in a matter of hours, I would show him, oh, by the way, you can do this and this and this. And I think that was driven by curiosity. And I think that's how I got into the tech aspect. Now, for the creative, I think it's innate. It's something that's it's brewing inside of you, and then it's there. It's not something that you can cultivate.
And did you know that was the direction?
Well, interesting. Now I know that I had my business plan ever since I was 4 years old. But no, my career was very unorthodox. I've had very obstacles, a lot of changes. I was in law school, and whilst I was in law school, I was bored. I didn't really like it, and I taught myself coding and went deep into how to set up a website. And by the age of 19, I had my own digital publication. And I was just, reviewing runway shows. And it was my dream to attend London Fashion Week. So I was pretending to be my own manager at the age of 20 years old. And at some point, I started getting press access. And I remember the first time I went there, everyone was dressed in black. And you would see, those great journalists, Susie Menkes and Kathy Horan and Tim Blanks. And they all looked so grim and in black. And I thought, what is this? Where did I come? But that was fashion back then. There were no influencers. There were no colors and noise. It was all about what is this collection about? And the sales actually depended on the review that the journalist would give. So if a journalist would write good things about you, you would have sales. If not, well, next time.
It's truly a Devil's Wear Prada kind of situation.
That was back then.
And how did you feel in it?
It was interesting to see how the media had the power. And then in 2012, there was a tectonic shift in the landscape of fashion. And, a lot of designers were playing musical chairs. One was out. Another one was being appointed to another house. And at some point, you have this amazing case study, and it's about the house of Saint Laurent, and it was under the helm of Stefano Pilati, and it wasn't doing well because it was very traditional and very, modest. And so in 2012, he exits the house and enters this guy, Eddie Sleeman. Eddie Sleeman is like this rock star photographer. He bans all the journalists from his shows. Front row seats were occupied by young musicians from the streets and artists and poets. He was using Keith Richards, Lou Reed, B.B. King, Marilyn Manson, Courtney Love for all of his campaigns. And he sort of built this community and invited everyone to be a part of that. And essentially what he did was he gave power back to the people. There were no journalists. There was nothing. 4 years later, Bloomberg declared a colossal boom for the parent company Kering, and he quadrupled the sales during his tenure, which prompts the question, so is branding the driving force behind sales? And I think that he understood what branding is, and it's about disseminating a feeling and making people a part of your brand.
Yeah. It's interesting. And so you found organically the answer to fashion from moms and engineering from your father into brand and marketing then. That was the answer for you.
I think so, yeah, because when I started Bungalow, it was a different plan. It was right after the pandemic and there was a surge in traveling. So I thought I would create a creative agency with a digital publication attached onto it that is about travel.
Yeah.
Because people would want, to escape after the pandemic. But I was pitching this idea during the first 3 months and it wasn't working out, and I could see the feedback that it wasn't okay, it wasn't good, it wasn't solid, the idea wasn't viable. So I went back to the drawing board and I had like 3 columns: the things I'm good at, the things I'm not, and what I need to do to get to where I am today. And I wrote down, okay, I really like fashion, I really like art and culture and those industries. I love technology. So what can I do to merge everything? And then that's when Bungalow came into fruition.
It's interesting. And if we go back to branding and marketing, so you mentioned rightly so, which is also what I believe, that branding is about managing those emotions and guiding people in on a more organic, emotional, kind of subconscious way. Thanks, Cleo. That was the dog. Bye. She's done with the podcast for now. What about marketing, right? So how do you distinguish those two? Because there is a lot of noise and it's not necessarily one versus the other, but they are separate kind of entities in a way.
They're intertwined, but they're 2 very different tools, let's say. So, and this is something, by the way, that I teach to young students at local universities, and I love it because a lot of people confuse the 2.
Yeah.
So if we look at it from a sales context, marketing sells, branding pre-sells. Marketing is about, cultivating customers. Branding is about building customer loyalty.
Yeah.
So if let's say we take an organization and this organization has different departments: operations, PR, marketing, sales. Branding is what glues everything together.
100%.
From how you communicate, to the colors that you use, to the way you introduce yourself, everything. And I can see that you're doing this amazingly.
Yeah,
well.
like we love this, and like we try to help people understand that branding is that cross-departmental glue that makes everyone that is currently on the same boat row into the same direction at the same speed, at the same tempo, So yeah, you could call it branding, or you could call it integrated business approach to things as well, But and you're absolutely right. And like one of the best ways that I've seen people define it is that marketing kind of tells you something, branding makes you feel about it, and sometimes it's not immediately understandable how you felt that thing, because we are emotional buyers, we are emotional creatures. And it's funny how many times we buy something and then we go back to our partner at home and it says, oh, but it was in a nice offer. Oh, but it has good performance. Oh, but it was 2 for 1. We're kind of post-rationalizing the
Yeah.
purchase.
Yeah.
We tend to believe that we are so rational, but in reality, we still buy by emotions. The subconscious area of our brain just lights up when we are trying to buy something. Right?
Exactly.
And in fashion, it's been a driver since forever. You know, you could say that fashion brands are the ones that mastered the art of branding.
100%. Because they rely on years and years of brand heritage, tradition, and cultivating that sense of exclusivity.
Yeah, and that intrinsic attention to detail as
Yes.
well. These tiny little ownable assets hidden in the clothing. New collection, 2, 3, 4, 5 collections every year, but still driven from the
Yeah.
same philosophy, isn't it? Like I think you made me think actually about this, that the ultimate pure manifestation of brand is fashion. Also because why then a white t-shirt with one specific label and another
Exactly.
t-shirt with another specific label, they're completely different price tags.
Exactly.
But functionally, it's
It's the same.
covers your body.
Exactly.
What about marketing then in fashion?
So marketing can be seen as a tool that can be leveraged by brands to, expand sales. However, this is when we need to be very selective. And also marketing, we also have some new age tech that's being also introduced. And this is where we need to ask the questions. Is this actually benefiting my brand, or am I doing this because everyone else is doing this?
It's a trend that that enhances my brand, or it's a trend that dilutes
Exactly.
my impact. So what is the state of marketing in fashion then?
There's a dichotomy for sure. So you're seeing all those large groups and historic houses that are refusing to do any marketing activities.
Oh, interesting.
So, for example, you have Hermes, which is a $6 billion house with no marketing department.
But they're still selling.
They're selling, but they're selling through their branding, through this sense of exclusivity. To get something, you need to be waitlisted for years.
Yeah.
And also, they rely on years and years of tradition.
They have it easy in a way, would you say?
Yeah, I guess so. And the more choice always stimulates demand. So obviously when you have a lot of brands, you also have a lot of demand. So I guess it also helps. But then you also have other designers who were recently introduced into the sphere of fashion, where they are utilizing TikTok and influencers and everything by the user-generated content, which is amazing. And that also yields results. So I guess the question is, does this align with my business? If not, then we're not doing it.
So would you say that brands that traditionally did not have a marketing first approach, they're considering it now after something happened, after there is a growth plateau or decline in sales or something? Do you see that? Or
No, I don't think so. I think it's just sticking to their brand principles. I think that's what it is.
and in a good or in a bad way? What's your perception?
I'm always a firm believer that if you are true to what you're doing and true to your values and to your principles, there is no right or wrong. So if, for example, we look at it from the tech aspect, fashion technology has been advancing for more than 2 decades.
Yeah.
But the pandemic turbocharged this.
Like every other market, I think.
Yeah. And if we look at it in simpler terms, U.S. e-commerce penetration jumped from 16% in December 2019 to 33% in April 2020. We have this work from home culture. We're using Slack, Discord, Zoom. So looking at it, not even from the new age tech aspect, even from things that we've already have, these were now amplified.
Yeah.
So digital processes and innovations that were, stagnant for so many years were now enduring. And it's important to also understand what led to the inflection point in fashion tech. Because in a recent survey that was conducted in the US, we were part of the research. We were able to see that simple users spend multitask time across one day, approximately 13 hours. So 13 hours of multitask time across one day.
So during the 13 hours, they're doing one thing at the same time.
Exactly. 5 hours of which go to video.
So they're very distracted people.
Very distracted people. Then you have the super user, which accounts 20% of the US population. Guess how many hours they spend in a day of multitask time?
18?
18, exactly.
Because I calculated the minimum hours of sleep.
Exactly.
So these guys wake up and they start
Exactly.
smashing it,
Oh,
doing
yes.
many, many things.
Oh, yes.
It's interesting.
And they also account for the bulk spend. Now, this leads to...
Oh, interesting. So you connected those two data, right?
Yes.
So they get targeted by video content,
Exactly.
which engage into a purchase.
Exactly.
Fascinating.
And then that led to gaming. So 2019, you have 124 million active users in the US, active gamers in the US. 2022, 148.
Yeah.
Now, 77%, don't ask me how I remember all those numbers. I
I
just
have no idea. And I swear there is no whiteboard here. She's not reading from any source.
So 77% of the 148 million active gamers engage in non-gaming activities inside of games. Okay? So what does this mean? Creating avatars, virtual good creation, virtual good selling, social media. Now the interesting thing...
So still related to the gaming, but not necessarily, playing, let's say.
It's a non-gaming activity.
Interesting.
Now, in tandem with that, we were seeing back then Microsoft, Tencent, Sony, Amazon, Meta building on their gaming stack.
Yeah.
That was exactly what led to an inflection point in fashion technology.
It's fascinating.
And metaverse was the catalyst. Now, we all know that metaverse was a hype cycle. It peaked in 2022, then it decreased, and now it's sort of sustained. But now they're looking at it as a business opportunity because it does yield 5% of their annual revenue, but not as a marketing tool. Now, the other important thing, which is kind of what I want to talk about, is what is the metaverse and what is Web3? Because there are some very important principles that arise from Web3. So metaverse is the user layer that sits on top of all things that are Web3. So Web3 is it's about decentralized protocols, banking, cryptos. It's about, the distribution of a say through a token or an NFT, non-fungible token. And it allows the brand and the consumer to build a relationship through accountability, transparency, and direct communication.
Yeah.
So metaverse is like the browser to the internet. It is the consumer layer, the social and
more personalized as well, which is a huge trend.
Exactly. It's the social interaction of it. Now, when we look at Web3 from a business perspective, instead of having board of directors and a board of directors, you have this thing called exit to community. So instead of exiting to an IPO or an acquisition, the brand can exit to its users. Now, the interesting thing is that Web3 is governed by two key principles. Transparency and governance. Transparency by fundamental nature is a blockchain. So all transactions are recorded on the chain. So the users know about inbound and outbound transactions made by that organization.
Yeah, there is full control.
Yeah. And it breeds accountability.
Yeah.
Now, governance is about the actual influence of the user in a business creative roadmap, strategy, branding. So for example, let's say a designer wants to host a runway show. they're going to ask, who do you want to see in the lineup? Which
Yeah.
model do you want to see?
So it's a bridge between the reality of the user needs and what the business wants to develop.
Exactly. And so going back to what we initially said about the case study when that designer entered the house and he gave power back to
Yeah.
the people. That was done through traditional means.
Yeah.
And now you have Web3 and Metaverse doing it through
Yeah.
the tech aspect,
Yeah.
exiting to the user.
Yeah. But you need to drag these traditional heritage houses into the meta, into these places, right? I mean, that's the
100%.
challenge.
Yes, I mean, that's what I would say. But now they're shifting away from the metaverse and the NFTs, and they're looking at tech, deploying technology more to back-end processes. Like, for example, there were significant investments done in the front end, e-commerce, CRM growth,
Yeah.
but not on the back end.
Yeah.
So now they're looking at end-to-end integration, breaking up the silos and connecting the two.
Efficiency maximization, probably reduction of
Bravo.
overheads
Exactly.
and number of employees potentially with AI and all of it, right?
That is another argument. But so we need to ask ourselves, does this align with me?
Yeah.
Does this align with my business? There is no right or wrong in terms of, this question.
Yeah. So when you go and help these people, what are you looking for in order to understand if it's the right approach or not, right? What's the control system?
Their story. I always want to know someone's story, because I think that there are 1,000 brands, 1,000 agencies, 1,000 people doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
But what differentiates you, it all comes down to your story and who you are and how you want to be associated out in the world. And if a client tells you, I don't want micro influencers, I don't want to use user generated content, I don't want to be on TikTok, great. That's not wrong. You can find other ways and to rely on promoting the brand.
Unless they're saying that they don't wanna because they have a misconception on it, perhaps, or they're trying to get defensive. Because like in my experience working with client, it's always hard at the beginning because there is a very little appreciation and understanding what is actually the business impact of branding, of long-term brand development. But once they are into the process, they understand, they see, they feel it, they can appreciate what is happening. So I'm wondering if some people have negative biases and connotation into these new ways of doing that. Their first answer is no,
Yes, maybe. I understand that. I understand what you're saying, but I also think that you should never follow. And you should do what's best for you and your values and your key principles.
So you understand the story, and then?
So we understand the story, we unearth it, and we incorporate it into the strategy.
Yeah.
Because that is how you position someone in order to eventually outperform any competitors.
Yeah, but you see it specifically on the intersection of brand marketing, fashion, and tech, right? So do you ever get into a situation where maybe these tech advancements are not right for you, or they come to you that already have an internal understanding that tech advancement, that technology implementation is what we need?
No, usually they don't. These clients, they're more, I don't think they have an understanding, but they don't really know how, let's say, AI works.
Yeah.
So
they have the problem, they don't know what's the tool to solve it, yeah.
Exactly.
And what's the problem usually?
Usually it's this association in terms of communication, not having correct direct communication with the consumer.
Yeah, so it's the internal narrative, internal perception, and the reality of the external perception. So there is a mismatch in that.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah, makes totally sense. And what do you think can tech learn from fashion instead of fashion learning from tech?
That is a good question. Well, both. Let's have a look at their similarities.
Yeah.
Okay. So they're both rapidly evolving. They're very fast-paced industries.
Yeah.
So they're often very intertwined.
Yeah.
Now with AI coming into the picture, this is not a hype cycle. We know that this is a structural change in software.
Yeah.
So the main question is this change, is technology driving this change for us? Or are we, as, let's say, fashion brand owners, driving this change? Is technology demanding too much from us? Because always, whenever there is light, there's always dark. There is digital fatigue, there's data misuse, distrust, disinformation. So so the question is not about tech learning from fashion. It's about the rest of all of the industries, not only fashion, taking control. Because we all know that if it's put in the wrong hands, humanity's greatest gift can also be its detriment.
And what's your view? Because it's not regulated now. It's free for all, right? In a way.
It is free for all. That's why there should be education first and foremost. And personally, I believe in technology that adapts to us. So whether that is AI or ambient computing or anything that is an adaptation means understanding, and understanding is always based on trust.
Yeah, and empathy as well, right?
And empathy. So if we deconstruct this and look at it from a different perspective, let's take, for example, the new AR glasses by Apple, which were launched in June last year.
Yeah.
Everyone was amazed and fashion paid attention. Now, if you think about it, we spend our lives sitting inches away from screens, and now we have this new thing that is millimeters away from our eyeballs. So my question is, do you think that will enhance humanity, will bring us forward, will push us forward as human race? I don't think the future is on our face. So when you look at it again from this angle and understand that, we need to cut this part.
Okay.
I forgot. I wanted to say, I got a blank moment.
You were saying about the VR not being the future not being the
it's not. Yeah. So and when we talk about fashion and through that lens, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry that depends on appearances and looks. I don't think anyone would want to walk around with those AR glasses every day looking like, kind of ridiculous.
Like Robocop, yeah.
Exactly.
It's interesting.
So the question is, how do we drive this change? What's next? And how do we do this right? Personally, I believe, in a future that it's an adaptation to us and that is driven by human connections.
Yeah, it's interesting. What pisses me off the most with AI now is that I see a lot of badly used AI. All of a sudden, people have an understanding that they don't need to think, they don't need to write, they just need to vomit things on a tool, and that tool will solve all their problems. And I love LinkedIn. Most of the stuff I do, it's on LinkedIn. It's a platform I believe into, and it's a platform that gave me back a lot. I became a LinkedIn top voice this year, and I see things happening brand-wise from there. To a point that I'm a bit disconnected from Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, because I try to focus only on one thing. And now LinkedIn is absolutely bombarded with brainless posts and comments, and people do not realize that it takes a fraction of a millisecond to spot them. Is in the punctuation, is in the tone, is in this mechanical writing, is in the words, is in everything. They think they're actually smart, but what they're doing is they're taking their brain, putting it into formaldehyde, and just leave it there. They're not utilizing it anymore. And it's fascinating how quickly it's to understand that it's been written by AI. So I think very well said, right? It's a fascinating trend. Not even a trend, it's like something that it's in our lives. To me, you either adopt it or fell behind and fade away. That's the reality, right? Everyone needs to learn how to embrace it. But it's a tool. It does not define you, right?
No, 100%. And it actually can strip away who you are as a person and your branding and your beliefs. And
it's a big threat in branding, like, because even if you're talking about content, talking about personal branding, it's personal branding. It's yourself out there. Now, if you remove one of the two, and most people remove branding, right? So they are personal, but they don't kind of get out there. But if you remove personal and you get out there, it's probably even worse. Because another element that you touched a bit upon it is like, yes, technology is rising from one side, but means that the desire and the yearn of human connection, it's only going to get more and more and more than that. I think, yes, AI and everything, but people will want to still find those moments to have that face-to-face, skin-to-skin.
I hope so, because definitely those AR glasses, they're shielding away eye contact, and trust is built through eye contact.
It's true. But I haven't seen even one of those glasses. I think the problem with technology and the problem with those things, I think it's just they're becoming nice to have things. It's not like
Hype cycles.
Yeah, they're cycles. Not like a sewing machine, which absolutely revolutionized fashion technologically a couple of years ago, or the iPhone or the iPod. Now we are having incremental changes, which kind of nice to have, so right?
That's why I think that, yes, the future is intelligent. It can be accountable. It can be traceable, utilizing, blockchain and product passports and all of that. Sustainable, but it can utilize humanity's greatest gift, technology, to foster all of those changes, as long as it puts human connections front and center.
I agree.
Otherwise, there is no point. So if we go back and look at everything that we talked about, the initial case study, Web3 and its core principles. Now with AI, the core principle and the common denominator is direct communication and forging those emotional ties.
Yeah, bring people closer to this brand. And so if we take this back and we localize it, what's the state? What's the state of branding, marketing, and fashion
in Cyprus?
In Cyprus?
Oh, okay. Well, I think people in Cyprus, and maybe people in general, I don't want to be very specific, they have this perception that fashion is superficial. So how can these two worlds, technology and something that's more colors and design and appearances merge and can coexist? But actually, when you look at fashion from a different perspective, it's not superficial at all. It dates back to World War I, when you had, Edna Chase, who was the first Vogue editor. And back then, all the clothes were made in Paris. So she was actually the one who said, no, I'm going to liaise the best dressmakers in New York, and I'm going to stage the first show. 1914, when World War I broke out. Then you had, the Vietnam War and the Kennedys and 60s, and you had musicians like Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin and, wearing, flowers, and it was about peace, love, and music, and it was a message against, the war that was happening in Vietnam.
The damning as well.
Exactly.
You're absolutely right.
Then you had the 70s and, Margaret Thatcher. And punks and Vivienne Westwood and McLaren, who, they were all about this disheveled look and anarchy in the UK and God Save the Queen. Then you had the 80s with, David Bowie and, flamboyance and theatricality. And then you had the 90s, which were shaped by the recession. You had 90s grunge, Nirvana, Pearl Jam, and they were all like wearing plaid, and it was thrift store shopping. And then you had designers like Calvin Klein. They didn't have money, so what they were designing was a simple white dress, and that was 90s minimalism, which stemmed from 90s recession. So it's much more than that. And sometimes you might be wearing something and it was actually born out of either a war, economic crisis, or a movement.
You're absolutely right. I think such a smart way to see at fashion. Even if you look Hugo Boss, what they've done with Hitler and all the dictators, but all the military armies, what it was all about a specific message that wanted to be sent by color, fashion, and shapes. And I think without getting too political into that, those were statements of profound power.
Exactly.
Driven by what we sometimes superficially label as appearances, but in reality they have a deep impact.
Yeah.
What about the 2000 and 2020s then? Because everything that you said, I have movies, I have music, I have memories, I have hairstyles, I have colors, I have specific images to connect with those decades that you mentioned, and I connect them immediately to what was happening in fashion, even if I'm not into fashion, right? What's happening now in these 20 years or so? Is there definable fashion-wise?
I don't think so. I think now it's driven by Generation Z. So it is definable through that angle that they are driving this. It's Generation Z, it's TikTok, it's content creation, it's following trends and having that certain stereotype. Is it influenced by wars and the economic crisis and music? No, because it's the same question. Do you still have musicians like Jimi Hendrix and Kurt Cobain and David Bowie around?
No, fortunately not. So is it defined by fluidity then, like by the maybe final understanding that humans are too complex and too diverse, too fluid to be labeled into specific movements? Because there aren't that strong of movements anymore. I think one person one day talks about a specific topic and then the other topic and then the other topic. Like it's almost like back in the days, this person will have probably been 3 different persons. And right now it's still the same person, right? It's very hard to put into a box.
Yeah, I think so. I think, but also at the same time, maybe we are becoming more superficial. And it's
we don't care about those causes that much.
No, we don't. We are driven by Instagram and TikTok and content creators, and you don't have this anymore, I think.
Have you ever struggled yourself with too much stimuli, too much digital input and output? Have you traveled around that kind of dilemma?
I think we all go through phases where we overuse digital platforms or tools, but for me it's always important to have balance. And as a person, I switch off, I meditate, I exercise a lot, so I don't there are boundaries, and especially if you're running something on your own, you need to have boundaries.
Otherwise it gets hard very quickly. But it's fascinating that we live in the most connected and digitally advanced age ever, but suicide are going up, depression is going up, anxiety is going up, ADHD, looks like it's a pandemic. All the kids have it, focus deficit, it is all connected. It's all connected to the fact that we don't care anymore, we're too much stimuli, too connected, hard to make authentic relations. It's all kind of the spirals. And a few brands and a few experts are able to kind of actually put it all together. But that's the I think the main dilemma. As a brand, as an organization, as a group of people, where do you fit in all of this, right? What is your answer to all of this, and how can you navigate all of that?
Once again, it all comes down to forging those principles and the
control system.
Exactly. And like I said, you shouldn't follow what other people do. One person from history or whatever that my values really align with is Jesus, because he challenged status quo and he never followed, and he preached love and acceptance. So if you have those values in what you do, you don't follow, you do whatever it is that you like and you want, then there's no way that you're not going to succeed.
So how are you feeling as a female Cypriot entrepreneur, creative, technologist, really well educated, really smart person. Like I really enjoyed our conversation. I didn't fully understand how deep you could go into your topic. So you obviously love these things, and you obviously you live for it. You're very passionate, but I am sure you get labeled very quickly in Cyprus.
Oh, yes. Oh, 100%. There is no way someone is going to believe that I work in tech or that I try to always joke that I have blonde highlights and they're all like laughing. But I think in Cyprus, it's a great place, and I get to meet so many amazing people like you, and then so many people who have also come here. But the difficult thing is that they don't accept people easily, and I think they put everyone in, they pigeonhole them. You know, they judge
very quickly.
Yeah, very quickly. So they meet someone and say, okay, this person is that 100%. And they don't give other people a chance.
Yeah.
Whereas I've noticed that abroad, they listen and they give chances, and they give chances to agencies that are at an infant stage.
Yeah, I know, and I cannot even fully comprehend to add the extra layer of unfortunate, being born with the weaker sex, right? I think because in Cyprus it's a patriarchal
100%
business infrastructure historically, and still very much is. So
I was told, I mean, I was told so many times that they're not going to pay attention to you because you're a woman. So you always need a guy next to you, and no issue with, like, I love men, and obviously, but that's not a common to say. You shouldn't differentiate.
What are we missing then to not have even these conversations?
Mindset. The correct mindset.
Of who?
We need to have a more broad mindset. We need to be educated. We need to have these conversations, because if we avoid the problem is not going to get resolved.
Was it even raised in your school journey here?
In my career in general.
Or at school as well? Yeah.
In school? No, never.
Because I think if that's probably where it should be starting, right?
100%. But again, does it matter? No, because you get to understand that people are going to talk no matter what you do. If you love what you do and you just keep going and you focus on what it is that defines you and your values and your principles, then it shouldn't really matter at the end of the day.
Did you see any changes in Cyprus?
In Cyprus? The recent years, yes. And I think it's because of a lot of people doing their own, starting something on their own. But I think we have a long way to go.
And what would you say to a male founder that labels you too quickly?
Oh, it's okay. I mean, honestly, I'm the type of woman who it's fine with it. And I would just tell him, give me a chance. And then you can decide on your own. Never judge a book by its cover.
Although fashion is appearances.
I know.
How do you judge that?
You don't.
How do you juggle that? Sorry.
How do you juggle that?
Yeah, because like I think a lot of the personal branding and fashion is about ultimately that positive first impression, which kind of contradicts the belief of we don't judge a book by its cover, right?
I'm gonna tell you something very funny. My style was always described as French borderline crazy person who is always like very barefoot and but that is actually a personal expression, and it comes from here. So
I see what you're doing.
Strip away the clothes and forget about the appearances, and if you look at a person and he's in jeans and a white t-shirt and he's just cool and whatever, a guy or a woman in a simple dress, it's who that person is. We are being misled that fashion is about the good pair of jeans, the good pair of that, and looking nice. But that's not about it.
Yeah, but we've been brainwashed since we managed to hold a digital device of how we should look, act, talk, and dress.
But it shouldn't matter.
Yeah.
It shouldn't. It goes beyond that.
Yeah. 100%. And the last and very important question is, I know that you also have another brand with your mom. How is work and family?
Actually, I'm very lucky because it's such a good dynamic and it's funny and we have fun because my mom is the creative mind. She's the designer. She designs everything. And then I'm the business oriented, the numbers, the e-commerce. So we are a good match. And we're also very fortunate enough to have our design sampling here in Cyprus, but our production is in India. So India is always a learning curve because you get to interact with people who have this amazing mindset of, you know, thoughts lead to actions and actions lead to habits, habits lead to your lifestyle, and your
Brilliant.
lifestyle ultimately determines your destiny. So something that they always tell me, control your thoughts and you will control your future.
100%.
And, you know, having that and being, every time I go, I feel just cleansed and there's no toxicity and there's no judgment and everyone is so calm. They always tell you no problem. There usually is a problem, by the way. 99.9% when they tell you that, there is a problem. But, you know, at the end of the day, is it the end of the world? No.
True. Evangelina, thank you very much for your time.
Thank
Where
you.
can people find you?
I'm also a fan of LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, I'm always more available.
Sounds good. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much.
And I'll see you next time, everyone. Bye.